From ancient symbols to modern bouquets. Close your eyes and breathe deeply. Can you smell them? Roses, jasmine, lavender, lilies, the sweet, earthy perfume of flowers. Tonight, we're wandering through gardens across time, exploring how humans have loved flowers, given them meaning, and used them to express what words cannot say. From ancient temple offerings to Victorian love letters written in petals, let the story of flowers and their secret language carry you gently into peaceful sleep. Our relationship with flowers reaches back to the very beginning of human history. Archaeologists have found evidence that Neanderthals placed flowers in burial sites over 60,000 years ago. In a cave in northern Iraq, they discovered the remains of a Neanderthal man surrounded by pollen from multiple flower species: yarrow, cornflower, hollyhock, and others. These flowers were deliberately placed, suggesting that even our ancient relatives recognized something special in flowers, something worth including in death's final journey. The earliest human civilizations incorporated flowers into their spiritual and daily lives. In ancient Mesopotamia, over 5,000 years ago, people cultivated gardens specifically for flowers. These weren't just vegetable gardens for food, they grew flowers for their beauty and fragrance. Clay tablets from ancient Sumeria mention roses, lilies, and other flowers, describing their cultivation and uses. Ancient Egyptians took their love of flowers even further. They were perhaps the first culture to develop true flower symbolism, assigning specific meanings and associations to different blooms. The lotus flower held supreme importance in Egyptian culture. This beautiful aquatic flower closes at night and sinks beneath the water, then rises and reopens with the morning sun. To the Egyptians, this daily rebirth made the lotus a powerful symbol of resurrection, creation, and the sun god Ra. The blue lotus, or sacred blue lily, appears throughout Egyptian art, in tomb paintings, on temple walls, in the hands of gods and pharaohs. Egyptians associated it with the creation of the world. According to their mythology, a lotus rose from the primordial waters, and when it opened, the sun god emerged, bringing light to the world. The lotus represented purity because it grew from muddy water yet remained clean and beautiful, rising above its murky origins toward the light. Egyptians used flowers extensively in daily life and religious ceremonies. They made garlands and bouquets for temple offerings, placed flowers in tombs to accompany the dead, and wore flower crowns at festivals and celebrations. When archaeologists opened King Tutankhamun's tomb in 1922, after over 3,000 years, they found the remains of flower garlands that had been placed there when he was buried. The flowers had dried and faded, but cornflowers, poppies, and lotus petals were still identifiable, a final gift from those who mourned him. The ancient Greeks inherited and expanded upon these flower traditions. They associated specific flowers with their gods and goddesses, weaving flowers into their mythology and religious practice. Roses were sacred to Aphrodite, goddess of love. According to myth, the first rose grew from the ground where Aphrodite's tears fell as she mourned her lover Adonis. Another version says roses grew red when Aphrodite pricked her foot on a thorn while rushing to save Adonis, her blood staining the white petals crimson. Narcissus flowers were connected to the tragic tale of Narcissus, the beautiful youth who fell in love with his own reflection and wasted away staring at it. Where he died, a flower grew, the narcissus, forever gazing downward as Narcissus had gazed into the pool. This story gave the narcissus associations with vanity and self-love. The Greeks wove flowers into crowns and garlands for religious festivals, athletic competitions, and symposia. Olympic victors received olive wreaths, celebrating both their achievement and honoring Athena, goddess of wisdom, who gave the olive tree to humanity. Different festivals honored different gods with appropriate flowers: laurel for Apollo, oak for Zeus, myrtle for Aphrodite. Greek philosophers walked in gardens while teaching, and Epicurus held his school in a garden, believing the peaceful beauty of flowers aided philosophical contemplation. The Greeks understood that flowers affected human emotions and thoughts, that their beauty brought joy and calm. Ancient Rome enthusiastically adopted Greek flower traditions and took them to new extremes. Romans loved flowers with almost excessive passion. Wealthy Romans showered themselves and their guests with flower petals during banquets, literally covering the floor in roses several inches deep. Guests reclined on couches cushioned with rose petals, wore rose garlands, and even bathed in water infused with rose essence. The Emperor Nero was famous for his extravagant use of flowers. At one legendary banquet, so many rose petals were released from the ceiling that several guests reportedly suffocated, buried beneath the fragrant cascade. Whether this story is true or exaggerated, it illustrates Roman flower excess. Romans developed an extensive language of flowers. Roses symbolized love, beauty, and passion, but different colored roses carried different meanings. Red roses meant deep love, white roses meant purity or innocence, and pink roses suggested grace and joy. Violets represented modesty and faithfulness. Lilies symbolized purity and were associated with Juno, queen of the gods. Romans gave flowers as gifts, used them in religious ceremonies, scattered them at weddings and funerals, and incorporated them into medicine and cosmetics. They made perfumes from flowers, particularly roses, and rose oil was highly prized and expensive. Roman gardeners cultivated flowers extensively, developing new varieties and creating stunning ornamental gardens. With the rise of Christianity, flower symbolism evolved to incorporate Christian meanings. Early Christians were cautious about flowers because of their association with pagan festivals and Roman excess, but gradually flowers became integrated into Christian worship and symbolism. The lily became associated with the Virgin Mary, representing her purity and grace. Religious paintings often show Mary holding lilies or surrounded by them. The white Madonna lily specifically became her symbol, appearing in countless works of religious art throughout the Middle Ages and Renaissance. Roses also gained Christian significance. The red rose came to represent Christ's blood shed for humanity, while the white rose represented Mary's purity. The rosary, the prayer beads used in Catholic devotion, gets its name from roses. Originally, prayers were counted using actual rose petals before beads replaced them. Medieval monastery gardens cultivated flowers both for their beauty and their symbolic meanings. Monks grew roses, lilies, violets, and other flowers, using them to decorate churches and for religious festivals. These monastery gardens preserved much botanical knowledge through the medieval period, carefully tending flowers while Europe struggled through the Dark Ages. Medieval people believed flowers had properties beyond the physical. They thought certain flowers could ward off evil, bring good luck, or protect against illness. Rosemary was planted by doorways to keep witches away. Lavender was believed to protect against the evil eye. Garlic flowers were hung in homes to prevent plague, not entirely wrong, as garlic does have antibacterial properties. The language of flowers, or floriography, that would reach its peak in the Victorian era had medieval roots. Lovers exchanged flowers as tokens of affection, with each bloom carrying secret meaning. A young man might send a sprig of rosemary to his beloved, symbolizing remembrance, "I will not forget you." She might return lavender, meaning devotion and luck, or roses signifying love. Medieval herbals, books cataloging plants and their properties, documented both the medicinal and symbolic meanings of flowers. These manuscripts were copied and preserved in monasteries, accumulating centuries of knowledge about which flowers healed which ailments, which brought good fortune, which symbolized various virtues and emotions. The Islamic world developed its own rich flower culture during the medieval period. Persian gardens, designed as earthly paradoxes, featured elaborate flower beds, fountains, and carefully planned layouts representing the perfection of heaven. The Persian word for garden, paradisa, is the origin of our word paradise. Persian poetry celebrated flowers extensively. Poets like Hafiz, Rumi, and Omar Khayyam wrote about roses, tulips, and narcissus with deep spiritual and romantic symbolism. The rose represented divine love and beauty in Persian mystical poetry. The nightingale's love for the rose became a common metaphor, the bird singing its heart out for the flower, unable to possess it, representing the soul's longing for the divine. Tulips held special significance in Persian and later Ottoman culture. The tulip symbolized paradise and perfect love. Its name comes from the Persian word dulband, meaning turban, referring to the flower's shape. The Ottoman Empire developed an intense passion for tulips, and the early 18th century is known as the tulip era in Turkish history, when tulip cultivation and breeding reached fever pitch, with vast fortunes spent on rare bulbs. The Crusades brought European knights into contact with Middle Eastern flower culture, and they brought back both flowers and ideas. Damask roses, originally from the Middle East, were brought to Europe and became prized for their intense fragrance. European gardens began incorporating Middle Eastern design elements and new flower varieties. The Renaissance brought renewed interest in classical learning, including Greek and Roman flower symbolism. Renaissance artists studied ancient texts and incorporated symbolic flowers into their paintings. Every flower in a Renaissance painting carried meaning that educated viewers could read. In Botticelli's Primavera, the painting is filled with symbolic flowers: roses for Venus, orange blossoms for marriage, violets for modesty. In religious paintings, specific flowers indicated specific virtues or biblical events. The columbine flower symbolized the Holy Spirit, the iris represented Mary's sorrows, pinks, small carnations, signified divine love. The age of exploration brought new flowers to Europe from around the world. Spanish conquistadors brought back marigolds from Mexico, sunflowers from North America. Portuguese traders brought frangipani and jasmine from Asia. Dutch merchants brought tulips from Turkey, sparking the famous tulip mania of the 1630s. Tulip mania was one of history's first major economic bubbles. Tulip bulbs became speculative commodities, with prices rising to absurd levels. At the peak, a single rare tulip bulb could cost as much as a house in Amsterdam. People traded homes, land, and life savings for tulip bulbs, convinced prices would keep rising. When the bubble burst in 1637, fortunes were destroyed overnight. The event became a cautionary tale about speculation and irrational market behavior. The 17th and 18th centuries saw botanical exploration flourish. European powers sent plant hunters around the world to bring back new species. These explorers endured tremendous hardships, disease, shipwreck, hostile encounters, all to find new flowers and plants. Their discoveries transformed European gardens and eventually European flower symbolism as new blooms were assigned meanings. Orchids arrived from tropical regions, exotic and difficult to cultivate, becoming symbols of luxury and rare beauty. Camellias came from Asia, their perfect, waxy blooms representing perfection and adoration. Dahlias arrived from Mexico in the late 18th century and quickly became garden favorites, representing dignity and elegance. Meanwhile, the language of flowers was becoming more elaborate. By the 18th century, Turkish salam or floral messaging had influenced European flower symbolism. In the Ottoman court, flowers, fruits, and objects were used to send coded messages. Each item had specific meaning, and combinations could spell out complex thoughts and feelings. This Turkish influence combined with existing European traditions to create increasingly sophisticated floral codes. Books began appearing cataloguing these meanings, though different sources sometimes disagreed on what specific flowers meant, causing occasional confusion. The Victorian era, spanning most of the 19th century, brought the language of flowers to its absolute peak. In a society with strict rules about expressing emotions, especially romantic ones, flowers offered a way to communicate feelings that couldn't be spoken aloud. The Victorians were obsessed with florography, and it became an essential accomplishment for any educated person to understand flower meanings. Dozens of flower dictionaries were published, the most famous being Le Langage des Fleurs by Charlotte de Latour in 1819 and The Language of Flowers by Kate Greenaway in 1884. These books listed hundreds of flowers and their meanings, along with advice on how to create meaningful bouquets. The meanings were incredibly specific. It wasn't enough to know that roses meant love, you had to know that red roses meant passionate love, white roses meant pure or innocent love, yellow roses suggested friendship or jealousy, sources disagreed, pink roses indicated perfect happiness or grace, and coral roses represented desire. A rose with thorns removed meant love at first sight, while a rose with leaves attached emphasized hope. Even the way you presented flowers carried meaning. A flower presented upright meant a positive sentiment, while upside down reversed the meaning to its opposite. A bouquet tied with ribbon on the right meant the sentiment referred to the giver, while ribbon on the left meant it referred to the recipient. The number of flowers mattered, and so did which hand you used to present them. This allowed for remarkably complex communication. A young man could send a nosegay, a small, carefully arranged bouquet, that expressed an entire paragraph of sentiment. Red rosebuds, beautiful and pure affection, white carnations, sweet and pure love, and ferns, fascination and sincerity, might communicate my feelings for you are beautiful, pure, and sincere. The recipient could respond with her own bouquet, accepting or declining his affections through her flower choices. Let's explore some of the most common Victorian flower meanings. The rose, as we've mentioned, was the queen of flowers, representing love in various forms depending on color and presentation. A single red rose meant I love you, while a dozen red roses intensified the sentiment. A budding rose suggested young love, while a fully opened rose indicated I am engaged to another. Carnations came in many colors, each with distinct meaning. Red carnations meant alas for my poor heart or passionate love. White carnations represented pure love and good luck. Pink carnations, according to legend, first appeared where the Virgin Mary's tears fell, and they meant I'll never forget you. Striped carnations meant refusal, I cannot be with you. Yellow carnations, unfortunately, meant rejection and disdain. Tulips represented perfect love, with red tulips declaring believe me or I love you. Yellow tulips suggesting hopeless love, the sunshine in your smile, and variegated tulips meaning you have beautiful eyes. White tulips meant forgiveness or worthiness. Daisies symbolized innocence, purity, and loyal love. They were associated with children and young love. The practice of pulling daisy petals while saying he loves me not dates back centuries, a simple divination game using the flower's many petals. Forget-me-nots, as their name suggests, meant remembrance and true love. Legend says that a medieval knight, picking these flowers for his lady, fell into a river. As the current pulled him away, he threw the flowers to shore, crying forget-me-not. The flower became a symbol of enduring love and memory. Lilies carried multiple meanings depending on variety. White lilies represented purity, virtue, and majesty. They were funeral flowers, suggesting the soul's return to innocence. Orange lilies meant hatred or disdain, while tiger lilies represented wealth and pride. The lily of the valley, those delicate bell-shaped flowers, symbolized return of happiness and sweetness. Orchids represented luxury, beauty, and refinement. Because they were difficult to obtain and cultivate, they also suggested strength and rare beauty. In Victorian times, giving someone an orchid was a significant gesture, acknowledging their exceptional nature. Peonies symbolized bashfulness, shame, or sometimes prosperity and happy marriage. Sources varied. In Chinese culture, peonies represented honor, wealth, and nobility, and this meaning influenced Western interpretations over time. Violets meant modesty, faithfulness, and virtue. Purple violets specifically represented I'll always be true, while white violets meant let's take a chance on happiness. Napoleon Bonaparte adored violets and they became associated with him. His supporters wore violets to secretly identify themselves during his exile. Sunflowers represented adoration, loyalty, and longevity. Their habit of turning their faces to follow the sun made them symbols of devotion. A dwarf sunflower meant your devoted admirer, while a tall sunflower suggested haughtiness or false riches. Chrysanthemums varied wildly in meaning by color. Red chrysanthemums meant I love you, white ones meant truth and loyal love, yellow ones suggested slighted love or sorrow. In many Asian cultures, chrysanthemums represented longevity and nobility, and these meanings sometimes conflicted with Victorian interpretations. Poppies symbolized sleep, peace, and sometimes death. Red poppies represented pleasure and consolation, white poppies meant sleep and dreams, and yellow poppies suggested wealth and success. The association between red poppies and war remembrance came later, after World War I. Lavender represented devotion, virtue, and luck in love. Its calming scent made it popular in sachets and perfumes, and Victorian ladies often carried lavender to soothe nerves and headaches. The color lavender itself came to be associated with refinement and elegance. Iris flowers symbolized faith, hope, wisdom, and valued friendship. The three petals represented faith, wisdom, and valor. Purple iris specifically meant compliments and wisdom, while yellow iris suggested passion. The iris was also associated with royalty. The fleur-de-lis, symbol of French monarchy, is a stylized iris. Magnolias represented dignity, nobility, and perseverance. In the American South, magnolia blossoms became symbols of the region itself, representing southern beauty and hospitality. White magnolias suggested purity and perfection, while pink magnolias meant youth and joy. Jasmine symbolized grace and elegance. White jasmine meant sweet love and amiability, while yellow jasmine suggested modesty and timidity. In Asian cultures, jasmine represented purity and was commonly used in religious ceremonies and wedding decorations. Gardenias represented purity, refinement, and secret love. Their intensely fragrant white blooms made them popular in bouquets and corsages. A gardenia given secretly expressed hidden affection. Hydrangeas could mean either heartfelt emotion and gratitude or frigidity and heartlessness, depending on the source. This confusion arose because the showy hydrangea blooms are actually mostly sterile, leading some to interpret them negatively. Others focused on their abundance and lushness as positive qualities. Azaleas symbolized temperance, fragility, and in some interpretations, romance blooming from friendship. In Chinese culture, azaleas represented womanhood and gentle passion. Marigolds surprisingly represented grief, despair, and jealousy in Victorian florography, despite their cheerful appearance. This may stem from their association with the Virgin Mary, Mary's gold, and by extension with sorrow at Christ's death. In Mexican culture, marigolds have different meanings, representing death and the afterlife during Dia de los Muertos celebrations. Morning glories symbolized affection and mortality. The flowers bloom beautifully in the morning but fade by afternoon, representing life's brevity. They also meant love in vain or unrequited affection. Daffodils represented regard, chivalry, and respect, but also new beginnings and rebirth because they bloom in early spring. A single daffodil was an omen of misfortune, while a bunch meant joy and happiness. Honeysuckle meant bonds of love and devoted affection. Its climbing, clinging nature and sweet scent made it a romantic symbol, representing lovers entwined together. Ivy symbolized fidelity, eternal life, and strong affection. Because ivy clings and stays green year-round, it represented eternal love and friendship. It was commonly included in wedding bouquets and decorations. Different colored flowers carried general color symbolisms beyond specific flower types. Red flowers generally represented passion, love, and desire. Pink flowers suggested grace, gentility, and admiration. White flowers meant purity, innocence, and reverence. Yellow flowers were tricky. They could mean friendship and joy, but also jealousy and infidelity, depending on context. Purple flowers represented royalty, dignity, and sometimes sorrow. Orange flowers suggested enthusiasm, desire, and fascination. Victorian florography wasn't limited to cut flowers. Herbs carried meanings too. Rosemary meant remembrance and was commonly included in funeral arrangements and wedding bouquets. There's rosemary, that's for remembrance, as Ophelia says in Hamlet. Sage represented wisdom and domestic virtue. Mint meant suspicion, while basil meant hatred or good wishes. Depending on the source, Italian basil traditions differed from English ones. Even the way a bouquet was arranged mattered. A tussamussi or nosegay was a small, tightly arranged bouquet, usually with a central flower surrounded by circles of other flowers and finished with a ring of greenery and lace. These were designed to be held and smelled, and their compact arrangement made the symbolic message more concentrated. Wreath shapes represented eternity, with no beginning or end. Cascading bouquets suggested abundance. A single perfect bloom conveyed simplicity and sincerity. The complexity or simplicity of an arrangement itself carried meaning. The Victorians took flower symbolism so seriously that mistakes could cause genuine offense or confusion. Imagine accidentally sending yellow carnations, rejection, when you meant to send red ones, love. Or giving chrysanthemums to someone who followed Asian tradition where they represented longevity, not realizing that Victorian interpretation suggested death. These cross-cultural confusions occasionally caused diplomatic incidents. The Victorian language of flowers gradually declined in the early 20th century as social customs relaxed. People could speak more freely about their feelings, reducing the need for coded flower messages. The two world wars disrupted many traditional customs, including elaborate florography. By the mid-20th century, most people knew only the basics. Red roses meant love, white lilies were for funerals, but the intricate vocabulary had been largely forgotten. However, some flower symbolism persisted and remains familiar today. Red roses are still the ultimate romantic gesture, especially on Valentine's Day. White lilies still appear at funerals. Brides still carry flowers with symbolic meaning, though they may not know the Victorian interpretations. Something in human nature wants flowers to mean something beyond their physical beauty. Different cultures developed their own flower symbolisms, sometimes very different from European traditions. In Japan, cherry blossoms, or sakura, represent the transience of life. They bloom spectacularly for only a brief time each spring before their petals fall, illustrating the Buddhist concept of mono no aware, the awareness of impermanence. Cherry blossom viewing, or hanami, is a major cultural event in Japan, with people gathering to appreciate the blooms and reflect on life's fleeting beauty. The chrysanthemum is Japan's imperial flower, representing longevity, rejuvenation, and nobility. The emperor's throne is called the chrysanthemum throne. In Japan, white chrysanthemums are funeral flowers, while other colors celebrate life and joy, quite different from Victorian meanings. The lotus, as mentioned earlier, is sacred in many Asian religions. In Buddhism, the lotus represents purity and enlightenment. The Buddha is often depicted sitting on a lotus flower. The lotus grows from mud, rises through murky water, and blooms clean and beautiful above the surface, symbolizing the spiritual journey from ignorance to enlightenment. In Hinduism, the lotus is associated with several deities, particularly Lakshmi, goddess of wealth and prosperity. The unfolding lotus petals represent the expansion of the soul and spiritual awakening. In Chinese culture, peonies are the king of flowers, representing prosperity, honor, and romance. They're associated with nobility and appear frequently in Chinese art. Plum blossoms represent resilience and perseverance because they bloom in late winter, pushing through the cold. Mexican culture celebrates marigolds, or cempasúchil, during Dia de los Muertos. The vibrant orange flowers are believed to guide spirits back to visit their families. Their bright color and strong scent create paths for the deceased to follow. Far from representing sorrow as in Victorian language, Mexican marigolds celebrate the connection between living and dead. In Hawaiian culture, different flowers carry specific meanings often related to the islands where they grow or their uses. Hibiscus represents delicate beauty and is the state flower. Plumeria, or frangipani, is used in lei and represents positivity and new beginnings. The tradition of lei giving itself carries meanings. Leis celebrate achievements, welcome visitors, express love, and honor the dead. Modern flower giving has simplified significantly from Victorian complexity, but flowers remain deeply meaningful gifts. Flowers mark life's important moments: births, weddings, graduations, illnesses, deaths. They express emotions: love, sympathy, gratitude, apology, congratulations. Red roses remain the default romantic flower. On Valentine's Day, florists sell millions of red roses. The tradition is so strong that red rose prices spike dramatically mid-February. A dozen red roses is the standard romantic gesture, though more extravagant admirers might send 2 dozen, 3 dozen, or even more. Funeral flowers serve important cultural functions, expressing sympathy and providing beauty during grief. Lilies, particularly white ones, remain common funeral flowers in Western culture. Roses, carnations, and chrysanthemums also appear frequently. The flowers acknowledge loss, celebrate the deceased's life, and comfort the mourning. Wedding flowers carry particular significance. Bridal bouquets are carefully chosen for beauty and meaning. Many brides research flower symbolism when selecting their bouquets, wanting blooms that represent love, happiness, and new beginnings. Popular wedding flowers include roses, love, peonies, happy marriage, calla lilies, magnificent beauty, hydrangeas, heartfelt emotion, and orchids, rare beauty. Mother's Day created another massive flower holiday. Anna Jarvis, who founded Mother's Day in America in 1908, chose white carnations to honor her own mother, and carnations became the traditional Mother's Day flower. Red or pink carnations celebrate living mothers, while white carnations honor deceased mothers. Different occasions call for different flowers. Get well flowers should be cheerful and uplifting. Sunflowers, daisies, bright tulips, avoiding funeral-associated flowers like white lilies. Congratulations flowers might be vibrant and celebratory, colorful mixed bouquets. Thank you flowers can be almost anything, though pink roses, gratitude, are traditional. Apology flowers require some thought. Red roses might be too romantic if the apology isn't to a romantic partner. White tulips represent forgiveness, making them appropriate. Or simple, sincere flowers like daisies might convey genuine regret without melodrama. The rise of florist delivery services changed how people give flowers. FTD, founded in 1910, created a network allowing people to send flowers anywhere via telegraph. Later, 1-800-FLOWERS and similar services made flower delivery even easier. You could order flowers by phone and have them delivered across the country. Online flower ordering simplified the process further. Websites allow you to browse arrangements, select one, enter delivery information, and add a card message. The flowers arrive without you visiting a florist or flower shop. This convenience increased flower giving. Impulse flower purchases became possible. However, this convenience came with costs. Local florists faced competition from large companies. Mass-produced arrangements replaced custom designs. The personal relationship between florist and customer diminished. Some argued that easily ordered flowers became less meaningful, just another commodity ordered online like anything else. Environmental and ethical concerns around modern flower production have emerged in recent decades. Most flowers sold in America and Europe are imported from South America and Africa, grown on large farms, shipped by air, and treated with pesticides and preservatives. This flower industry employs millions of workers, often in difficult conditions for low wages. The environmental cost of shipping flowers thousands of miles is significant. In response, sustainable flower farming and locally grown flowers have gained popularity. Farmers' markets now include flower vendors selling locally grown, seasonal blooms. These flowers haven't traveled across continents, haven't been grown with excessive chemicals, and support local farmers. The slow flower movement, similar to slow food, emphasizes seasonal, local, sustainable flowers. The symbolic meanings of flowers continue evolving. Pride movements have adopted rainbows and rainbow-themed flowers to represent LGBTQ+ identity and inclusion. Certain flowers have become associated with social causes. White poppies represent peace and the anti-war movement, in contrast to red poppies representing war remembrance. Flower tattoos carry personal symbolic meaning for many people. Rose tattoos might represent love or loss, lotus tattoos spiritual growth, cherry blossom tattoos life's transience. People choose flowers that resonate with their experiences and values, creating personal symbolism. Despite all the changes in how we grow, buy, and give flowers, their fundamental appeal remains unchanged. Flowers are beautiful, their colors, shapes, and scents delight our senses. Flowers are ephemeral, they bloom briefly, making their beauty precious and poignant. Flowers are diverse. Thousands of species offer endless variety. Flowers are natural, they connect us to the earth, to seasons, to living things beyond human creation. When we give someone flowers, we're participating in a tradition thousands of years old. We're doing what ancient Egyptians did, what medieval lovers did, what Victorian suitors did, using nature's beauty to express human emotion. The specific symbolic meanings may vary across cultures and centuries, but the gesture remains constant. Here is something beautiful, temporary, and precious, given to you. Rest now, and let your mind wander through gardens of memory and imagination. Picture roses in every color, their velvety petals and sweet scent. Imagine fields of lavender stretching to the horizon, purple and fragrant. See cherry blossoms drifting on spring wind like snow, each petal a small goodbye. Flowers have witnessed human history, growing in gardens while civilizations rose and fell, blooming in wartime and peace, decorating celebrations and mourning losses. They've carried our messages of love, hope, sympathy, and joy across centuries and cultures. The language of flowers may have simplified, but flowers themselves speak to something deep in human nature. Our love of beauty, our need to express emotion, our awareness of life's precious brevity. Tomorrow, you might encounter flowers, in a garden, a bouquet, a single bloom in a vase, a pattern on fabric. When you do, you'll carry with you this long history of meaning, this accumulated weight of human emotion and symbolism that flowers bear. Every flower is a word in an ancient language, every garden a poem written in petals. Sleep peacefully, surrounded by imagined flowers in all their beauty and variety. Let their gentle presence, their quiet growth, their patient blooming remind you of nature's rhythms, of beauty's persistence, of the simple joy of watching something grow and flower. Dream of gardens where every bloom carries meaning, where walking among flowers is like reading a book written in scent and color. Dream of receiving the perfect bouquet, each flower chosen with care, expressing exactly what needed to be said. Dream of planting seeds and watching them grow, nurturing beauty into being. Rest now. The flowers will bloom again tomorrow, and the next day, and the day after that, continuing their ancient conversation with humanity, offering beauty and meaning, speaking their silent language of color and scent. Sleep well, and may your dreams be filled with flowers, roses and lilies, daisies and tulips, lotus and cherry blossoms, peonies and violets, all blooming in endless variety, each one beautiful, each one meaningful, each one a small perfect gift from the natural world. Good night.